The sun was setting over Zerath Prime, painting the jagged skyline in shades of orange and purple. Kale and Lyra perched atop a tall building, overlooking the warehouse district where the raiders had fled after their last encounter. The city was quiet now, almost eerily so, but Kale knew better. Danger never truly disappeared. They will come back, Kale said quietly, scanning the streets below. And next time they won't hold back. Lyra's glowing eyes scanned the horizon, moving with precision. Yes, a stronger. More plan. Careful. Kale nodded, thinking quickly. The previous fights had taught him one lesson. Brute force was not enough. They had survived because Lyra was clever, using her abilities in ways no one expected. Now, Kale realized they needed a final plan to end the threat once and for all. They moved through the shadows, slipping silently to the warehouse where the raiders had regrouped. Kale carried his blaster while Lyra stayed close, her glowing eyes flicking between every corner, every potential threat. She was small but powerful, a force to be reckoned with, and Kale relied on her instincts as much as his own. Inside the warehouse, the raiders were preparing for their next attack. Their leader, the tall humanoid with red glowing tattoos, barked orders, assembling reinforcements and checking weapons. Kale crouched behind some crates, observing carefully. The place was heavily guarded more than before. If they attacked recklessly, they would be overwhelmed. We need distraction, Lyra whispered, her glowing eyes narrowing. Kale raised an eyebrow. Distraction? Yes, control. Chaos lead. Trap, Kale nodded. He had learned to trust her instincts completely. Together they moved into position. Lyra manipulated the crates and machinery silently, creating small barriers and potential traps. She lifted a stack of barrels with a subtle gesture, angling them near the entrance. Kale noticed how she used the environment itself as a weapon, turning ordinary objects into tools of survival. As the raiders began their patrols, Kale and Lyra struck. Lyra moved first, her small hands flicking in precise motions. The crates toppled, creating sudden obstacles. Barrels rolled into the pathways of unsuspecting raiders, tripping them or blocking their movement. Kale fired carefully, disabling any who approached too quickly. The leader roared in frustration. Find them! Don't let them escape. Kale ducked behind a stack of crates, heart pounding. Lyra crouched beside him, her glowing eyes fixed on the leader. Wait, now, she whispered. With a subtle movement, she lifted a heavy metal beam overhead and dropped it strategically, cutting off the raiders' reinforcements. The sound echoed through the warehouse, startling the attackers. Kyle took the opportunity to move forward, firing with precision. But it was Lyra's manipulation of the environment that made the difference. Crates shifted, beams fell, and energy barriers appeared where needed, slowing the raiders' advance. Kyle realized something important. Lyra's strength was not just physical. It was mental. She could think, plan, and adapt faster than anyone he had ever met. Her small size belied her intelligence and tactical skill. She was more than an ally. She was a strategist, a protector, and a friend. The battle raged for minutes, both sides cautious yet relentless. Kale and Lyra moved as a unit, covering each other, anticipating moves and exploiting weaknesses. Every time a raider thought they had the upper hand, Lyra's abilities turned the tide. She redirected attacks, created barriers, and controlled the environment with precision. Kale had never seen anything like it. Finally, the leader of the raiders charged directly at them, rage written across his face. He swung a heavy weapon, aiming to strike Kale down. Lyra acted instantly. With a subtle gesture, she shifted gravity around the weapon, slowing it just enough for Kale to dodge. Then she caused a stack of crates to fall behind him, blocking the leader's retreat. Kale fired, hitting his mark, and the leader stumbled, trapped and furious. The other raiders saw their leader contained and began to hesitate. Fear spread among them as Lyra moved silently between the shadows, her glowing eyes striking fear into anyone who looked directly at her. Kale felt a surge of relief and admiration. He had underestimated her before, thinking she was just an outcast. Now he realized she was extraordinary, intelligent, brave, and fiercely loyal. Now, Lyra whispered, and he understood immediately. Together they pushed forward, using the traps Lyra had set to her advantage. Raiders stumbled into barriers. Crates fell on those too slow, and energy barriers blocked any attempt to counterattack. Kale moved alongside her, firing when necessary, but always trusting her lead. The raiders began to retreat, realizing they were outmatched. The leader shouted curses, but Kale and Lyra did not pursue. They knew the victory was theirs, and overextending could be dangerous. The immediate threat was neutralized. Kale sank to the ground, breathing heavily. He looked at Lyra, who crouched beside him, calm and composed despite the battle. "You both saved more than me," he said quietly. "You protected everyone here too. You're amazing." Lyra's eyes glowed faintly. "Life, worth more than Ration, not only human." Kale nodded slowly, understanding completely. Her bravery and intelligence extended beyond personal survival. She cared about others, about right and wrong. He felt a deep sense of respect and gratitude. As the first light of dawn filtered through the warehouse windows, Kyle and Lyra stepped outside. The streets were quiet, but the city was slowly awakening. Kale realized that Lyra had not only saved his life, but had shifted the balance of power in the spaceport. People would see her differently now, not just as an alien outcast, but as someone strong, intelligent, and worthy of respect. They moved to a quiet rooftop to rest. Kyle shared some food while Lyra ate silently, her glowing eyes dimming as the sun rose higher. For the first time, Kale felt complete trust, not just in her abilities, but in her judgment, her instincts, and her loyalty. He realized that together they could survive anything. Kale thought about the ration pack he had given her. A simple trade, and yet it had gained him an ally stronger, smarter, and braver than anyone he had ever met. He felt awe. Lyra was not just an alien outcast, she was a partner, a friend, and perhaps a hero in her own right. "You stay with me?" Kale asked softly. Lyra's glowing eyes met his. "Yes, survive. Together." Kale smiled faintly. "Together," he echoed. As the twin suns rose fully, painting Zareth Prime in warm light, Kyle and Lyra watched the city. Danger was not gone, but for the first time Kale felt hope. He was no longer alone. He had Lyra, the alien outcast he had once thought worthless, and now, he realized, she was the most valuable ally he could ever have. Together, they had faced danger, survived impossible odds, and forged a bond neither could have anticipated. And Kale knew one thing for certain: their story was only beginning. With courage, intelligence, and trust, they could face any challenge that came their way. The city below bustled quietly as life returned to normal. People would whisper about the strange alien who had fought so fiercely, and Kale knew that Lyra's name would spread, not for her past, not for her scars, but for her strength, her courage, and her loyalty. Kale and Lyra remained on the rooftop, silent for a moment, watching the rising sun. They had survived together, and they would continue to do so. Danger might lurk in every corner of the spaceport, but Kale knew that with Lyra by his side, there was nothing they could not face. The world was wide and dangerous, but Kale no longer felt fear. He had found someone who matched his determination, his courage, and his will to survive. Together, they were stronger than any obstacle, any enemy, and any challenge that might arise. And so, as the suns climbed higher in the sky, Kale and Lyra prepared to face the next adventure, whatever it might be, side by side, ready to take on the universe together. The alien outcast, once thought worthless, had proven herself invaluable. And Kale, who had once dismissed her as a simple bargain for a ration pack, now knew the truth. Some treasures cannot be measured by money, but by loyalty, courage, and trust. Together, Kale and Lyra stepped down from the rooftop, ready to face the future, stronger, wiser, and united. The city of Zareth Prime might have seen chaos and danger, but it had also witnessed the beginning of a legendary partnership. And for Kale, that ration pack would always remind him of the night he made the smartest decision of his life, choosing to trust the alien outcast who would go on to save not only his life, but also change the course of his future forever. The next morning, the twin suns of Zareth Prime rose over the jagged skyline, casting pale light on the deserted streets of the spaceport. Kyle stretched, his muscles still sore from the previous night's battle. He rubbed the back of his neck and glanced at Lyra, who sat cross-legged on the rooftop, her glowing eyes scanning the horizon as if she could see threats far beyond their line of sight. Kyle had spent the night thinking. Lyra had saved his life twice, guided him through traps, and protected others he didn't even notice. He had underestimated her, dismissed her as a simple outcast, and yet she had proven herself far more capable than anyone in the spaceport. He felt a strange mix of admiration and responsibility. He owed her more than a ration pack. "We can't stay here," Kyle said, breaking the silence. "They'll come back. And next time they'll bring more. We need a plan." Lyra tilted her head slightly, her glowing eyes observing him. "Plan? Yes, watch. Patterns, they repeat mistakes," Kale nodded, impressed. "Patterns, right. We need to know their routines, weaknesses. And then we hit back smart, not just fight blindly." Lyra's small hands moved with precision, adjusting some debris on the rooftop, creating subtle vantage points and barriers. Kale watched her work, realizing she had a way of using the environment itself as a weapon. She wasn't just strong, she was tactical, a thinker, and a strategist. Over the next few hours, Kale and Lyra moved cautiously through the empty streets, observing the raiders from hidden positions. Kale counted their numbers, noting the weapons they carried and the way they moved in groups. Lyra pointed out small weaknesses, blind corners, poorly guarded entrances, and patterns in their patrols. Predictable, Lyra whispered. "Using to advantage," Kale grinned. "I like that. You're teaching me something new. I've been scavenging my whole life, but I never thought of it like this." Lyra glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "Survive. Requires learning. Alone, learn fast. Together, stronger." Kyle nodded, understanding the implication. They were stronger together, yes, but he also realized something else. He had never trusted anyone fully before, not even other humans. And now he was learning that this alien, whom he had bought for a single ration pack, had earned his full trust. By midday, they had mapped out the raiders' base of operations, a half-collapsed warehouse near the edge of the spaceport. Kale studied it carefully. The building was heavily guarded, but Lyra had already identified weak points. A side entrance with fewer guards, a stack of crates that could serve as cover, and a set of overhead beams that might be manipulated to block or trap attackers. "This is our chance," Kale said, excitement mingling with caution. "We strike smart, we hit fast, and we get out before they know what happened." Lyra nodded. "Yes. Careful. No. Reckless." As night fell, they moved into position. Kale carried a small blaster, while Lyra's abilities remained hidden, ready for the moment they would be needed most. The warehouse loomed ahead, dark and foreboding, shadows stretching across the cracked metal doors. Kyle crouched behind a stack of crates, whispering to Lyra. "We wait for them to shift guards. Timing will be everything." Lyra's eyes glowed faintly as she scanned the area. "Now, move." They slipped through the shadows, silent and precise. Lyra's movements were almost ghost-like, her small form blending into the darkness. Kale followed, relying on her instincts as much as his own eyes. They reached the side entrance just as Lyra had predicted. Fewer guards, a clear path inside. Kale's heart pounded. He had faced danger before, but nothing like this. This was a calculated strike against a large, organized group, and failure could mean death. He glanced at Lyra. She gave him a subtle nod, her glowing eyes steady. "Together," Kyle whispered. They entered the warehouse. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of oil, metal, and sweat. Raiders moved between crates and machinery, speaking in low tones. Kale counted at least a dozen, heavily armed and alert. He swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the moment. Lyra moved first. Her hands made subtle motions, and the crates overhead shifted slightly. A stack of boxes toppled silently, blocking the view of a pair of raiders. Kale followed her lead, staying low and moving quickly between cover points. One raider noticed movement and aimed his weapon, but before he could fire, a faint energy barrier appeared in front of him. He stumbled backward, confused, and Kale fired a quick shot, disabling him. Lyra's movements were precise and silent, her glowing eyes illuminating the space just enough to guide Kale. The other raiders reacted, but Lyra was ready. She lifted crates, redirected beams of light, and used her subtle manipulation of the environment to block attacks. Kale realized that she was not just fighting, she was controlling the battlefield. Every move was calculated, every action designed to give them the advantage. Kale felt a surge of confidence. He had fought alongside humans before, but never with an alien like Lyra. She was fast, intelligent, and fearless. He followed her lead, trusting her completely, and together they turned the warehouse into a maze of traps and obstacles for the raiders. Minutes stretched like hours. The raiders were relentless, but Lyra's strategy kept them off balance. Kale's blaster shots found their marks, but it was Lyra's subtle powers that made the difference. She created small barriers, shifted objects, and manipulated gravity enough to confuse and slow their attackers. Finally, the leader of the raiders, the tall humanoid with glowing red tattoos, appeared. He raised his weapon, shouting, "Enough! You will not escape." Kale glanced at Lyra. She was calm, her glowing eyes fixed on the leader. With a subtle movement of her hands, she caused a heavy metal beam to drop behind him, cutting off his escape. Kale fired, but it was Lyra who ensured he stayed contained, using her abilities to block any counterattack. The leader roared in frustration, realizing he was outmatched. The other raiders began to retreat, seeing their leader trapped. Kale and Lyra did not pursue. They knew better than to overextend. The warehouse was theirs for now, and the immediate danger was over. Kale sank to the ground, breathing heavily. He looked at Lyra, who crouched beside him, calm and composed. "You outsaved more than me," he said quietly. "You protected the others too. You're amazing." Lyra's eyes glowed faintly. "Life. Worth more than Ration, not only human." Kale nodded slowly. He understood. Lyra's courage and intelligence extended beyond personal survival. She cared about more than herself, about others, about right and wrong. He felt a deep sense of respect and gratitude. As dawn approached, the first light filtered through the broken walls of the warehouse. Kale and Lyra stepped outside, tired but alive. Kale looked around at the city slowly waking. He realized that Lyra had not only saved his life, but had changed the balance of power in the spaceport. They moved to a quiet rooftop to rest. Kale shared some food, while Lyra ate silently, her glowing eyes dimming as the light grew stronger. For the first time, Kale felt something he had never felt before: trust. Complete, unwavering trust. He knew that together, they could face any danger. Kale thought about the ration pack he had given her. A simple small trade, and yet, it had gained him an ally stronger, smarter, and braver than anyone he had ever known. He felt a strange sense of awe. Lyra was not just an alien outcast, she was a partner, a friend, and perhaps even a hero. "You stay with me?" Kale asked softly. Lyra's eyes met his. "Yes, survive." "Together," Kyle smiled faintly. "Together," he echoed. The twin suns rose higher, casting warm light over Zerath Prime. Kyle and Lyra sat in silence, watching the city awaken. They had survived danger, outsmarted their enemies, and forged a bond that neither of them could have predicted. Kale knew the next challenge would come, that the raiders would return stronger and more determined. But he also knew something else: he was no longer alone. He had Lyra, the alien outcast he had once thought worthless, the one he had bought for a single ration pack. And together they were stronger than anything the spaceport could throw at them. The story of Kale and Lyra was just beginning. Danger awaited, but so did adventure, friendship, and a partnership that would change both their lives forever. And Kale knew, without a doubt, that the alien outcast he had once underestimated would remain by his side, ready to face any challenge with courage, intelligence, and unwavering loyalty. The night air was thick with tension as Kale and Lyra slipped through the quieter alleys of the spaceport. The neon lights from the distant market barely reached them, leaving shadows to dance on the wet metal streets. Kale's heart was still racing from the encounter with the raiders. He had survived, yes, but only because of Lyra, and the thought both amazed and unsettled him. He glanced at her, the alien outcast walking silently beside him. Her small form moved gracefully, her glowing eyes scanning their surroundings like she could see every detail in the dark. Kale still could not fully understand her abilities, but he knew one thing clearly: she was not ordinary. You really did that back there," Kale said quietly, breaking the silence. "I've never seen anything like it." "How did you?" Lyra tilted her head, studying him. "Practice or survive. Always alone. Learn," Kale nodded slowly. That made sense. She had survived exile and danger relying only on herself. That kind of experience made someone special. He felt a pang of guilt. He had thought she was worthless. A simple bargain for a ration pack. Yet she had just saved his life, not once but twice. They reached the edge of the market and found a narrow service corridor leading to a storage area. It smelled of oil and metal, but it would serve as a temporary refuge. Kyle leaned against the wall, taking a deep breath, while Lyra crouched beside him, her glowing eyes scanning for any sign of the raiders. They will come back, Lyra said matter-of-factly. Stronger. More. Kyle rubbed his temples. He had been a scavenger for years, fighting off bandits and rival miners, but he had never faced anything like this. I know, he admitted. We need a plan. And fast. Lyra's eyes narrowed and she pointed toward a stack of crates. Trap. Here, hide. Wait. Kale looked at her, confused.
Trap, wait.
You want to fight them again? Lyra shook her head slightly. Not fight, control. Use space. Make weakness, Kale's brow furrowed. He didn't fully understand her instructions, but he realized that trusting her was their only chance. He nodded slowly. All right. Let's do it your way. For the next hour, Kale followed Lyra's careful guidance. They moved crates, overturned carts, and created makeshift barriers. Lyra's small hands moved with precision, manipulating objects in ways Kale could not explain. She seemed to anticipate every move, positioning them to defend themselves while also creating escape routes. Kyle noticed her attention to detail. She memorized every corner, every shadow, every possible approach the raiders could take. He realized she was not just strong, she was strategic. She didn't rush into battle blindly. She planned, calculated, and adapted. As they worked, Kale shared what little he knew about the raiders. They are a local gang, he said.
Not just thieves.
They work for someone bigger. Whoever controls them wants this sector. They'll come back, and next time they won't hold back. Lyra listened silently, her glowing eyes flicking between the crates and Kale. Ready, she said finally. Kale nodded. He felt a strange mix of fear and trust. He had faced danger before, but never with someone like Lyra. She was an unknown factor, and yet she was their best chance. As the hours passed, the first signs of movement appeared. Shadows shifted at the far end of the corridor. Kale tensed, gripping his blaster, while Lyra's eyes glowed brighter. They, coming, she whispered. Kale held his breath. The raiders emerged, larger in number than before. Their faces were twisted with anger, their weapons gleaming under the faint light. Their leader, the tall humanoid with glowing red tattoos, stepped forward, smirking. Thought you could hide, human? You can't run forever. Kyle glanced at Lyra. She crouched slightly, her hands moving in a subtle motion. Objects in the corridor began to shift almost imperceptibly. A crate lifted slightly. A metal barrel rolled into position and a faint shimmer of energy appeared between two walls. Kale had no idea what she was doing, but he knew to follow her lead. The raiders charged. Kale fired his blaster, but it was clear that their firepower was no match for Lyra's precise movements. She lifted crates with a flick of her fingers, blocking incoming shots, and used the barrels to push raiders off balance. Kale realized that she was controlling the environment itself, turning every object into a weapon or a shield. One raider lunged at Kale, but Lyra reacted instantly. She moved her hand and a small barrier of energy formed in front of him, stopping the attack. Kale stumbled back, astonished. How are you doing that? He shouted. Lyra didn't answer. She didn't need to. Every move she made was a lesson in survival. Kale began to follow her instinctively, ducking, weaving, and firing when necessary. Together they became a single unit, human and alien moving as one. The battle raged for several minutes. Kale's muscles burned and his heart pounded, but he didn't falter. Lyra's abilities allowed them to control the fight, turning the raiders' own aggression against them. Crates toppled, barrels rolled, and walls shook as the corridor became a battlefield. Finally, the raiders began to retreat, realizing they were outmatched. Their leader glared at Kale and Lyra, his anger barely contained. "This isn't over," he shouted. "We will return, and next time, you won't survive." Kale watched them disappear into the shadows. He felt a mixture of relief and awe. Lyra stood beside him, calm and composed, her glowing eyes dimming slightly. "You saved me," Kale said, still catching his breath. Lyra nodded. "Life worth more than Ration," she repeated. Her voice was soft, yet filled with certainty. Kale smiled faintly. "I guess that ration pack was the smartest trade I ever made," he admitted. They moved away from the corridor, finding a safe corner in a nearby abandoned storage area. Kyle leaned against the wall, his mind racing. He had underestimated Lyra, judged her by her appearance and reputation. Now he saw her true value. Not just her abilities, but her intelligence, courage, and loyalty. Lyra sat beside him silently, her glowing eyes observing the faint lights outside. Kale could see the scars on her skin more clearly now, evidence of a life full of hardship and struggle. He felt a strange sense of respect and empathy. She had survived exile, danger, and mockery, yet she had remained strong. "You don't talk much about your past," Kyle said softly. Lyra tilted her head. "Past? Painful, alone, learn," Kyle nodded. He understood. Life on Zerath Prime had been harsh for him too, but he had never faced the kind of rejection Lyra had. "I know what it's like to be judged for what people think you are," he said quietly. "Most humans see aliens as weak, strange, or dangerous. They don't see the person inside." Lyra's eyes glowed faintly. She seemed to consider his words. "Humans different. Some judge, some see." Kyle smiled faintly. "I see you," he said simply. "And I'm glad you're here." For a moment there was silence. The sounds of the spaceport faded into the distance. Kale realized that despite the danger, despite the uncertainty, he felt a sense of trust he hadn't felt in years. Lyra was not just a companion, she was an ally, a protector, and perhaps a friend. Suddenly, a faint sound made Kale's ears twitch. Movement outside. Lyra's eyes glowed brighter. "Watch. Shadows," she whispered. Kale grabbed his blaster, ready for another attack, but Lyra held up a hand. "Wait. See?" From the shadows emerged a group of citizens, frightened and confused. They had witnessed the fight and had been hiding nearby. Lyra stepped forward, her presence commanding yet calm. The citizens looked at her in awe, seeing not just an alien outcast, but someone powerful and intelligent. Kale watched as Lyra spoke to them, her broken galactic basic clear and precise. "Safe, now go." "Hide, help, come later." The citizens nodded, retreating quietly. Kyle realized that Lyra's actions had done more than save him. They had protected others too. Her bravery and skill extended beyond self-interest. As dawn approached, the first light of Zerath Prime's twin suns began to glow on the horizon. Kale and Lyra found a safe rooftop overlooking the city. They rested, tired but alive. Kale reflected on the events of the night. He had bought Lyra for a single ration pack, thinking she was weak and useless. Now he knew the truth. She was extraordinary. Her abilities, intelligence, and courage had not only saved his life, but had also given him hope. Kale turned to her. "Tomorrow we need to plan," he said. "We can't stay here. The raiders will come back. We need a strategy, and I want you by my side." Lyra's eyes glowed softly and she nodded. "Together. Survive," she said. Kale smiled. "Together," he echoed. Kale shuffled through the crowded spaceport market, his stomach growling louder than the merchants shouting their wares. The neon lights reflected off the wet metal streets, painting everything in hues of green and pink. Smoke from distant cooking stalls mingled with the mechanical hum of starships landing nearby. Kale's boots scuffed against the metal grating, and he clutched the last few credits in his hand like they were a lifeline. He had learned long ago that life on the mining colony of Zerath Prime was harsh. People didn't give second chances, and trust was a currency more expensive than any ration pack or water purifier. Kale was no stranger to hard work or tougher odds, but tonight, he was running low on both supplies and luck. Ahead of him, a crowd had gathered around a small, twisted figure. The alien outcast looked nothing like the average being Kale had ever seen. She was small, barely waist-high to a human, with jagged scars running across her grayish-blue skin. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, and her thin, delicate hands moved with careful precision as she adjusted a tattered cloak around her shoulders. Merchants sneered and shouted insults, calling her names that Kale didn't even recognize. Kale paused and watched. There was something about her movements, almost cautious but precise, that made him curious. Most aliens he had met either tried to sell something flashy or threatened passers-by. But this one didn't beg, didn't shout, didn't even raise her voice. She simply waited. "She's worthless," a merchant jeered, slapping a tin can on the ground. "No one will buy from that freak." The crowd laughed, and the alien didn't react. She simply tilted her head, studying each person in silence. Kyle felt a flicker of pity. He also felt opportunity. He didn't have many credits left, and he couldn't afford another failed transaction. He walked closer, careful not to draw attention. "You alien," Kyle said, his voice sharp. "You sell something?" The alien's glowing eyes met his, and she nodded slightly. Her voice was soft, almost musical, as she spoke in broken galactic basic. "I help? Tasks. Small. Work." Kyle raised an eyebrow. "Small work?" he repeated. He glanced at the few credits in his hand. Then he smiled faintly. All right. How much? 1 ration pack, she said plainly. Cale blinked. He couldn't help laughing softly. A ration pack? For all that you can do? He glanced at the crowd. No one else was interested. Most were laughing at her, ignoring her presence completely. Cale shook his head. Fine. Deal. He handed over the ration pack, which wasn't much, but at least it would keep him fed for a day. The alien took it carefully, almost ceremoniously, and nodded in acknowledgement. She didn't say anything else. Cale felt a strange mix of amusement and curiosity as he walked away. The crowd murmured and laughed among themselves. Cale overheard one man whisper, "He bought her?" "Ha, that's funny. That alien can't do anything." Cale ignored them. He had his own business to attend to, and tonight he couldn't afford distractions. As night fell, the spaceport transformed. The bright neon lights now glowed more ominously, and the once bustling crowd thinned out to a handful of late-night traders and travelers. Kyle, carrying his small bag of supplies, started toward his temporary shelter on the edge of the market. He barely noticed the shadows stretching along the alleyways. A sudden noise made him freeze. Footsteps, heavy and fast, echoed behind him. Cale's hand went instinctively to the small blaster at his hip. He glanced back. A gang of raiders emerged from the shadows. Their faces were covered by masks, their bodies bulky with stolen armor. Their leader, a tall humanoid with glowing red tattoos, pointed directly at him. "Evening, human," the leader said. "Hand over your credits and supplies. Move fast and we might let you live." Cale swallowed hard. He was outnumbered and underprepared. He weighed his options quickly. Fight and risk death? Run and possibly get cornered? Or maybe the alien could help. He turned back toward the market, scanning for the small figure. She was there, waiting quietly in the shadows. Her glowing eyes met his and she gave a subtle nod, almost as if she had expected this moment. Cale hesitated. "You can do something, right?" he whispered. The alien's eyes narrowed slightly and her thin hands moved in a strange, deliberate motion. Cale felt the air shift around him. Objects nearby, trash cans, crates, even small signs, quivered as if caught in a silent force. The raiders laughed, thinking it was nothing. Cale clenched his fists, unsure what was about to happen. Then the first raider moved forward. A gust of unseen force slammed him backward into a stack of crates. The others shouted in alarm. Cale's heart pounded. The alien's small figure moved like a shadow, dodging and weaving. Her glowing eyes flared brighter, and a wave of energy swept across the alleyway, pushing the raiders to the ground. Cale stared in shock. What are you?" The alien didn't answer. Instead, she continued her precise, silent movements, keeping the raiders at bay. She lifted a crate with a gesture, sending it spinning toward the attackers. Then, with another subtle motion, she created a small barrier that protected Cale as he scrambled backward. The fight was over in moments. The raiders, shaken and frightened by the alien's powers, retreated into the shadows, muttering curses and threats. Cale's legs trembled as he lowered his blaster. "You saved me," he said, his voice rough. The alien simply nodded. "Yes, life. Worth more than ration." Her voice was quiet, yet each word carried weight. Cale couldn't hide his astonishment. He had bought her for a single ration pack, thinking she was weak and useless. Instead, she had saved his life. For the first time, he saw the value of looking beyond appearances. They moved away from the market, Kyle following the small alien as she led him through hidden paths and side alleys. He noticed her attention to detail. She never walked where the light fell too brightly, and she kept track of every sound. Cale realized she was more than just powerful. She was clever, cautious, and fully aware of her surroundings. "Who are you?" Cale finally asked, trying to break the silence. The alien hesitated. "Lyra," she said simply. "Cast out. My world, survive." "Alone?" Cale nodded slowly. "I know what that's like," he said, thinking of his own struggles to survive in the mining colonies. "People don't care much for the weak, do they?" Lyra's glowing eyes studied him for a moment. Then she nodded. "Weak is choice, or seen as choice." Cale chuckled softly, despite the tension still in his muscles. "You're not weak," he said quietly. "Not even close." They found a quiet corner of the market to rest. Cale shared a small portion of his food with her, and Lyra accepted it silently. There was no small talk, no need for words. In the shadows of the neon lights, an unlikely partnership began to form. Night deepened and the spaceport grew quiet. Kale couldn't sleep. His mind kept returning to the fight with the raiders. He realized he had underestimated the alien, just as everyone else had. The truth was clear. Strength wasn't always obvious, and appearances could be deceiving. Suddenly, a noise outside the market made both of them tense. Footsteps, faster and heavier than before, echoed along the metal streets. Kale reached for his blaster, but Lyra raised a hand. Her glowing eyes flared once again, and Kale felt the subtle shift in the air. Something powerful and dangerous was coming. The shadows moved, revealing more raiders, larger and more aggressive than before. Their leader, the same humanoid with red tattoos, stepped forward, smirking. "Thought you could hide, human?" he sneered. "We'll finish what we started." Kale's heart pounded. He looked at Lyra, who stood calmly, her eyes glowing softly. "You can stop them again?" he whispered. Lyra nodded slightly. "Try, survive, together." Kale realized that this small, strange alien, bought for a single ration pack, was his only hope. He had nothing else to rely on. No reinforcements, no hidden weapons, nothing but the unlikely ally at his side. The raiders charged. Kale followed Lyra's lead, moving as she instructed. She lifted debris and crates with a subtle motion, sending them spinning to block the attackers. Kyle fired his blaster, but it was Lyra's manipulation of the environment that truly protected them. She created barriers, redirected attacks, and used her strange, silent powers with precision. The fight was intense, and Kale realized that he had never faced anything like this. Lyra wasn't just strong, she was intelligent, adaptive, and fearless. He began to see her as more than an ally. She was a partner, a savior, someone who could change the course of his life. When the raiders finally retreated, beaten and confused, Kale sank to the ground, gasping for breath. Lyra stood quietly beside him, her eyes dimming as the glow faded. "You saved me again," Kale said, still in shock. Lyra nodded, her movements graceful despite the fight. "Life worth more than ration," she repeated. Kale smiled, a mixture of awe and gratitude. "I guess that ration pack was the best investment I ever made," he said quietly. For the first time that night, Kale felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that survival wasn't just about luck or credits. Hope that even in a universe full of danger, unlikely allies could make all the difference. As they walked through the empty streets of the spaceport, Kale glanced at Lyra. She was small, unassuming, and yet incredibly powerful. He realized that he had misjudged her, not just as an alien, but as a being capable of loyalty, courage, and intelligence. "Tomorrow," Kale said softly, "we find a way off this planet. Together." Lyra's glowing eyes met his, and she nodded. Together. The night stretched on, but for Kale it was no